First contact gone wrong. The ISS Magellan emerged from its jump drive at the edge of the Vega system, its massive hull gleaming under the distant starlight. Captain Elena Torres stood at the command center, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic display, showing the mysterious signal source that had brought them across 20 light-years of space. Engineering confirms all systems nominal after the jump. Captain, reported Commander David Chen, his fingers dancing across the tactical console. Hull integrity at 100%. Defense grid online. The Magellan represented humanity's finest achievement in space engineering. 2 kilometers of reinforced titanium alloy armor, multiple redundant systems, and enough firepower to defend against any natural space hazard. To humanity, it was simply practical engineering, born from centuries of hard-learned lessons about the merciless nature of space. New contacts, announced Lieutenant Sarah Wong from the sensor station. Multiple objects entering detection range. They're ships, Captain. Alien vessels. The bridge crew fell silent as the holographic display updated. Dozens of vessels appeared, their designs unlike anything humanity had ever conceived. They seemed to be made of flowing crystal and light, with no visible weapons, armor, or shield emitters. They moved with impossible grace, leaving no engine traces. First contact protocols, ordered Torres, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Broadcast the greeting package on all frequencies. The alien ships suddenly scattered in all directions, their movements suggesting panic. Energy signatures flared across their hulls in patterns that the Magellan's computers interpreted as emergency broadcasts. "They're transmitting," Wong reported, her voice tight with concern. "It's, Captain, they're warning their homeworld about us. They're describing the Magellan as a planet killer and calling for immediate military response." Torres felt her stomach sink as she realized what was happening. To a civilization that had mastered efficiency and elegance in their engineering, the Magellan must look like a nightmare made real. A massive warship bristling with what they perceived as weapons. "Send them the engineering logs," Torres ordered. "All of them. The Titan colony disaster, the Europa incident, everything that taught us why we build our ships this way. Show them why humanity learned to treat space like a siege." As the data streamed out, the alien vessels' panic broadcasts began to change. Confusion replaced fear in their transmissions as they processed the history of human space exploration, a history written in losses, near misses, and hard-learned lessons about survival in the void. The largest alien vessel, a cathedral-like structure of crystalline spires, slowly approached the Magellan. Its next transmission carried a different tone: curiosity. "They're asking why we need armor thick enough to survive a solar flare," Wong translated. "They want to know why we build redundant systems for our redundant systems." Torres stepped forward, her voice clear as she spoke for humanity. "Because space is not our friend. It's not our enemy either. It simply is, vast, beautiful, and utterly uncaring about our survival. Everything we build reflects that truth. We'd rather look paranoid than lose another soul to the void." The alien response came faster this time, carrying what the translators described as a mix of horror and fascination. They had never considered space travel from such a perspective. Their own technological development had focused on harmony with the cosmos, not survival against it. As the first day of contact drew to a close, the alien ships had formed a loose circle around the Magellan. Not in threat, but in protective formation. They had begun sharing their own technological insights, while their engineers pored over the human designs with growing respect. Humanity's first contact hadn't gone as planned, but it had revealed something profound. There was more than one way to reach the stars, and perhaps the best path forward would combine human determination with alien elegance. The cultural chasm. The next 48 hours aboard the ISS Magellan became an unprecedented exchange of ideas and perspectives. The alien species, who called themselves the Luminary, had established a permanent delegation aboard the human vessel, though their reactions to human engineering continued to fascinate both sides. Your atmospheric processing system has 5 redundant backups, stated Vexterra, the Luminary's chief engineer, their crystalline form shifting colors as they spoke, and each backup has its own backup power supply. Commander Chen nodded as they walked through the engineering deck. Standard protocol after the Perseus Station incident of 2157. Lost 32 people when a micrometeorite pierced their single atmospheric processor. The Luminary engineer's form flickered with what the translation matrix identified as distress. Their species had never experienced such casualties in space. Their ship's systems were self-healing, drawing on principles that seemed to blur the line between technology and biology. "We have something to show you," Vexterra announced. "Our council has authorized a technology exchange." In the Magellan's main conference room, the Luminary presented their findings. Their holographic displays showed the human vessel, but overlaid with flowing patterns of energy that human sensors had never detected. "Your ship fights against the cosmos," explained Vexterra. "Ours dance with it. We can teach you to see the currents of space-time, to flow with them rather than brace against them." Captain Torres studied the displays with intense interest. "And we can show you how to survive when the dance turns deadly. Space may be a dance partner, but it's one that occasionally tries to step on your toes with an asteroid." The joke took several moments to translate, but when it did, the Luminary delegates' forms rippled with appreciation. The cultural exchange was working, albeit slowly. However, not all was proceeding smoothly. A faction among the Luminary remained deeply suspicious of human designs. They saw humanity's approach to space travel as fundamentally aggressive, perhaps even indicative of deeper violent tendencies. "Your species builds as if preparing for war," accused council member Zareth during a particularly tense meeting. "Every system designed for maximum survival suggests a deep-seated expectation of conflict." Torres felt her patience wearing thin. "We build for survival, not war. When you've lost as many people to space as we have." The meeting was interrupted by an urgent alert. Both human and Luminary sensors had detected something massive approaching from the system's outer edge. Lieutenant Wang's voice came through the comm system, tight with concern. "Captain, we're detecting a structure. It's bigger than anything we've ever seen. Initial readings suggest it's artificial, but its design matches neither human nor Luminary architecture." The Luminary delegates' forms had shifted to a deep, warning purple. "Impossible," whispered Zareth. "The predecessors were said to have abandoned this sector eons ago." As both species rushed to their respective sensor stations, the massive object continued its approach. Its surface was covered in geometric patterns that seemed to defy Euclidean geometry, and it was broadcasting a signal that caused both human and Luminary translation systems to crash. "What are we dealing with?" Torres demanded. Zareth's form had contracted to its most compact state, a sign of extreme stress. "If the ancient records are correct, we may have awakened something that should have remained sleeping. The predecessors did not abandon this sector. They sealed it off. And we, in our diplomatic exchange, may have just broken that seal." The massive structure's signal suddenly changed. Both human and Luminary ships registered energy spikes that defied their understanding of physics. The void between the stars began to twist in ways that made the crew's eyes hurt. Torres and Zareth shared a look that transcended species barriers. Whatever their differences, both of their civilizations were now facing something far beyond their experience. The question was, could their contrasting approaches to space travel combine to face this new threat, or would their philosophical differences doom them both? Hidden threats. The massive predecessor structure loomed in the void, its geometric patterns shifting in ways that made the laws of physics seem more like gentle suggestions. The ISS Magellan's sensors struggled to maintain a lock on it, while the Luminary vessel's more advanced scanning systems returned readings that their operators refused to translate, claiming the concepts would damage human minds. "Multiple energy signatures detecting across all bands," reported Lieutenant Wang, her fingers dancing across her console. "It's like it's talking to itself in a million different voices." Captain Torres stood at the command center, sharing a rare moment of complete agreement with Zareth. Both leaders watched as the ancient construct continued its awakening. Our histories, Zareth's crystalline form pulsed with urgent colors, speak of the predecessors as beings who transcended traditional spacetime. They built things that weren't simply machines, but fragments of rewritten reality. The structure suddenly emitted a pulse that rippled through space. The Magellan's heavily shielded systems barely registered it, but two of the lighter luminary vessels spun out of control, their elegant systems temporarily scrambled. "Get those ships under tractor beam," Torres ordered. The Magellan's industrial-strength gravitational manipulators, designed to handle asteroid debris, locked onto the stricken luminary vessels and stabilized them. Vexterra's voice came through the comm, their usual melodic tones sharp with revelation. "Captain, council member, we've analyzed the pulse. It wasn't an attack. It was a test. The structure is scanning us, using methods beyond our comprehension to determine if we are worthy." "Worthy of what?" Torres asked, though she suspected she wouldn't like the answer. The structure answered for itself. A beam of impossible light connected it to both the Magellan and the main luminary vessel. Information flooded their computers, not data in any traditional sense, but concepts that seemed to rewrite themselves as they were received. Commander Chen's voice cracked as he reported, "Captain, we're getting historical records. The predecessors, they weren't guardians or builders. They were running from something. Something that hunts advanced civilizations." The luminary ships clustered closer to the Magellan, their usual grace replaced by very human-like caution. The structure's transmissions continued, showing images that hurt to look at. Entire galaxies going dark, space itself being consumed, and the predecessors' desperate plan to save what they could. "They built this structure," Zareth translated, their form barely maintaining coherence, as both warning and weapon. "It was meant to hide this sector of space until the younger races were ready to face what's out there. Our combined presence here triggered its awakening." Torres felt a chill as the structure's next transmission came through. "It's showing us something approaching our galaxy," Wong reported. "Time scale suggests 80 years until contact." The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity's paranoid approach to engineering and the luminaries' harmonious technology suddenly seemed like two pieces of a puzzle the predecessors had left for them to solve. "Your redundancy," Vexterra suddenly spoke, their form brightening with inspiration, "combined with our energy manipulation abilities, your armor and our phase-shifting technology. Together we might have a chance," Torres finished. She turned to Zareth, whose form had shifted to a color she'd never seen before. "Your people thought we built the Magellan like a fortress because we were preparing for war. They were right. We just didn't know what war we were preparing for." The predecessor structure pulsed once more, but this time the sensation it conveyed was clear to both species. Approval. As if it had waited millennia for two different approaches to survival to meet and understand their need for each other. "We need to contact both our governments," Torres said, her voice firm with resolve. 80 years is a blink of an eye for what we need to do." Zareth's form stabilized into a determined configuration. "The luminary have always believed in finding harmony with the universe. Perhaps it's time we learn to balance that with your human determination to survive at all costs." As the predecessor structure began downloading its full database to both species ships, Torres couldn't help but smile grimly. Humanity's first contact had turned into something far more significant than anyone had imagined. A partnership born of necessity, forged in the shadow of an approaching storm. Unity forged in crisis. 3 months after the predecessor structure's awakening, the space around the Vega system had transformed. The ISS Magellan floated at the center of a vast construction effort, its hull serving as a testing ground for the integration of human and luminary technologies. Captain Torres watched from her newly installed quantum viewer as luminary energy conduits were grafted onto the Magellan's armor plating. The crystalline pathways pulsed with colors that human eyes had never been meant to process, yet somehow strengthened the hull rather than weakening it. Fascinating, Commander Chen muttered, reviewing the latest test results. Their energy matrices don't just reinforce our armor. They actively adapt to make it stronger. It's like the metal itself is learning. Vexterra, now permanently stationed aboard the Magellan as chief of the integration project, shifted their crystalline form in agreement. And your redundancy protocols have revolutionized our own designs. We never considered the possibility of cascade failures because our systems were too perfect. Sometimes imperfection is the best teacher, Torres responded, remembering countless human disasters that had led to improved safety measures. The latest sensor data streamed across her quantum viewer, showing the progress of similar modifications being made to luminary vessels. Their elegant ships now bore strips of human-designed armor, looking like delicate sculptures wrapped in bands of steel. The predecessor structure, which they'd taken to calling the Archive, continued to transmit data about the approaching threat. Each new piece of information seemed more terrifying than the last, yet it also brought the two species closer together. New transmission from Earth Command, Lieutenant Wong announced. The first wave of defense platforms is ready for deployment. The Luminary Council has approved the proposed locations. Torres nodded, studying the strategic map. Humanity's contribution to the defense grid was based on pure survival engineering. Automated platforms built to withstand everything from solar flares to kinetic impacts. The Luminary had enhanced these designs with their phase-shifting technology, allowing the platforms to exist partially out of normal spacetime. We're receiving priority communication from the Archive, Wong continued, her voice tightening. It's showing us something new. The quantum viewer filled with images that made Torres's head hurt. The threat they faced wasn't just coming, it was accelerating. The 80-year timeline had just become 50 years. Call an emergency session, Torres ordered. All command staff, both species. We need to move faster. Hours later, in the Magellan's newly expanded conference room, humans and Luminary gathered to face their shared crisis. The room itself symbolized their growing cooperation. Human-designed chairs for the human crew, crystalline resonance platforms for the Luminary, all arranged in a circle that emphasized their unity. The Archive's latest data suggests our enemy can sense preparations against it. Zarth began, their form pulsing with urgent patterns. The more we build, the faster it comes. Then we build faster, Torres stated firmly. We've learned more in 3 months of cooperation than either of our species learned in centuries alone. We can do this. Commander Chen brought up a holographic display of their latest joint project, a prototype vessel that combined the best aspects of both civilizations. The HMS Unity is ready for its first trial run. It has the Magellan's survivability with luminary maneuverability. If it works. When it works, Vexterra corrected, their form brightening. Our simulations show 97% compatibility between the systems. We've solved the phase variance issues in the power grid, and the neural interface accepts both human and luminary operators. Torres studied the design with pride. The Unity represented everything they'd achieved together. A ship that could stand against the void while also dancing with it. Its weapons were purely defensive, designed to protect rather than destroy. Yet its potential power output exceeded anything either species had achieved alone. We should be the test crew, Torres announced, surprising even herself. A joint human luminary command team. We started this together. We should see it through. The room fell silent as her words sank in. The Unity's maiden voyage would be dangerous. Untested technologies, combined in ways neither species fully understood. Yet the symbolism of humans and luminary working together to pilot it could not be ignored. Zareth's form shifted to a color that the translation matrix identified as deep respect. Agreed. We face this as one people, or we don't face it at all. As the meeting concluded, Torres returned to the quantum viewer, watching the Unity's final assembly. The ship looked like nothing either species would have designed alone. elegant yet sturdy, powerful yet graceful. It was, she realized, a physical representation of hope. 50 years to prepare for an enemy that consumed galaxies. It should have seemed impossible. Yet as Torres watched humans and Luminary working side by side, their differences becoming their greatest strength, she felt something she hadn't expected. Confidence. A new dawn. The HMS Unity hung in space between the Magellan and the Luminary flagship, its hybrid design catching starlight in ways that made it seem alive. Captain Torres stood on its bridge, surrounded by interfaces that merged human practical engineering with luminary elegant efficiency. The command center was a perfect fusion of both species' philosophies, sturdy and survivable, yet flowing with an almost organic grace. "All systems report ready," Commander Chen announced from his station, his hands moving across both holographic controls and physical backup interfaces. "Hybrid drive is stable, hull integrity at optimal levels." Beside him, Vexterra's crystalline form pulsed with anticipation. Phase variance compensators are synchronized. The ship's consciousness is accepting both our presences. The Unity wasn't just a vessel. It was an experiment in cooperation that would define the future of both species. Its revolutionary propulsion system combined human fusion technology with luminary phase shifting, allowing it to both power through space and flow with it. Its defensive systems could switch between impenetrable armor and energy phase shifting, adapting to any threat. "Begin primary drive test," Torres ordered. "Take us out, nice and easy." The Unity moved with impossible grace for its size, its movements precise yet powerful. As they cleared the construction zone, the predecessor archive pulsed with what their sensors interpreted as approval. "New data incoming from the archive," Lieutenant Wong reported from her integrated sensor station. It's showing us something about the threat we never saw before." The quantum viewer filled with fresh images, but these were different from the terrifying visions they'd seen before. These showed details of the galaxy-consuming entity's structure, its weaknesses, its fundamental nature. "It feeds on division," Zareth observed, their form shifting through analytical patterns. "It grows stronger when civilizations face it alone, weaker when they stand together." The predecessors didn't fail because they weren't strong enough. They failed because they tried to fight it in isolation. Torres felt understanding dawn. That's why the archive waited for 2 different species to make contact. It needed us to prove we could work together before it showed us the full truth. The Unity's sensors suddenly detected a disturbance at the edge of the system. A tear in space-time appeared, smaller but similar to the signatures they'd seen in the archive's warnings. "Scout probe," Vexterra announced, their form rigid with concentration. "The enemy sends them ahead to test new territories. This one's tiny, but its quantum signature matches the archive's records." Torrid straightened in her command chair. "Then let's show it what it's dealing with. All stations, combat test protocols. Let's see what this ship can really do." The Unity moved like nothing either species had created before. It flowed through space like a luminary vessel, yet struck with human precision. Its hybrid weapons fired, beams of energy wrapped in quantum-shifted armor fragments, designed not to destroy but to disrupt and contain. The probe never had a chance. Caught between the Unity's phase-shifted shields and armored hull, trapped by weapons that turned its own space-warping abilities against it, the probe imploded. Its death scream echoed across frequencies that shouldn't have existed, carrying a message back to its makers. "Analysis complete," Wong reported, her voice tight with excitement. "The probe's destruction signature suggests our hybrid technology is effective. More than effective, it's devastating to their kind of entity." The bridge crew, human and luminary alike, shared a moment of profound relief and pride. The Unity wasn't just a symbol anymore. It was proof that their combined approach worked. "Sending final test data to both governments," Chen announced. "Production of the Unity-class vessels can begin immediately." Torres turned to Zareth, who had moved to stand beside her. 50 years doesn't seem quite so impossible now, does it?" The Luminary Council members' form shifted to a color that needed no translation. Hope. Perhaps that is the final lesson the predecessors wanted us to learn. The void between stars may be cold and uncaring, but it need not be faced alone. As the Unity began its return journey, Torres watched the predecessor archive start to power down, its purpose finally fulfilled. It had brought two vastly different species together, helped them overcome their prejudices and fears, and given them the tools to face a threat greater than either could have handled alone. The ship's quantum viewer showed construction already beginning on more Unity-class vessels. Each would be crewed by both species, each representing the best of both worlds. Human determination and luminary grace, working in harmony to protect their corner of the galaxy. Send word to both our governments, Torres ordered. The Unity project is a success, and tell them. She smiled, looking at her crew, human and luminary working side by side. Tell them this is just the beginning. The end.